Welcome to the Mindset Over Matter podcast. My name is Gabby Gooding, and I'm the founder of the Mindset Over Matter podcast. And today's episode is our first in the series, and I am committed and ready to embrace the fact that it's going to be an uncut, unfiltered, messy, imperfect version of what this podcast, I'm sure, has the potential to become. I was inclined to call it the Mind Over Matter podcast, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that our mind is often primed for survival, mainly based on our life experiences, which are not always fair, and not for success based on our goals. And given the fact that we have more control over our mindset than our predisposed mind and its natural predisposed state, we are officially here as Mindset Over Matter. So welcome, and thank you so much for listening. So as a perfectionist personality myself, I am using this platform as a way to prove to myself and to others, including you, hopefully, that it is possible and arguably better to start before you're ready, or to try to learn to start before you're ready, and embrace the imperfections that we all face as we try to make it, so to speak, in our lives, in our careers, and so on. And so whether you are a one-time listener or whether you evolve into a regular fan, I am so happy that you're here to join me and my guests eventually on a journey of self-discovery, self-mastery, success by our own individual definitions, and transformation of the most personally profound nature. So to start off this series, I am excited to share with you why I wasn't going to record this episode today. So I took note of my list of excuses, or 3 of them anyway, that I'm going to share with you. The list was actually longer, as I'm really trying to be more mindful of ways in which I've been getting in the way of my own success, because I do think if we were to objectively look at the reasons why we are not in the place that we hope to be in life, whether it's in our personal lives, in our career, or otherwise, I do believe that we are actually the greatest obstacle to our own hopes and dreams. So I'm happy to share a couple of my excuses with you today. So here it is. First, my first excuse was that I don't have a perfect script or a perfect topic. Now, this has been something I've actively been trying to work on actually over the last year or so. Now, when COVID hit, I started a new role at work, and it was a big promotion in my mind, and a big promotion in my mind means more pressure to try to be perfect and try to always add value and always say the right thing, never make a mistake or stumble. And so I actually used to use the inevitable virtual meeting environment during COVID as a crutch for my fear of not being 100% polished every time that I spoke in a team meeting or even in a one-on-one meeting. And so I saw it, my insecure mind saw it as a perfect opportunity to be able to craft the perfect script before every meeting and try to think ahead and think of all the possible things that they would ask me in a meeting, or ask me to share in a meeting, especially if I had the opportunity to present something myself. It was the perfect scenario for me to be able to perfectly craft a script. But at the same time, luckily, I was taking a communications course as part of my master's degree that I was doing at Queen's University in Canada here. And they made us do an exercise on recording ourselves speaking, just for any purpose, right? Just a video similar to this, or an audio file similar to what you may be listening to now, and to analyze how we felt about it, right? So they I think what I remember is that they made us do, it was sort of a 3-part thing, if I can count right ahead of time. One was to watch the video without any audio, which I found interesting, to try to analyze our mannerisms. And so to see, are we making proper eye contact? Eye contact is a really tough thing to try to do when you're virtual and you're looking at yourself for the most part, which we know caused Zoom fatigue and all those types of things. when really you maybe should be looking at the camera, but then that adds a lot of pressure that you're looking at this tiny little dot and it just feels unnatural. But that was part of the task, was to see how do we come across there's one imperfection number one, and I'm embracing it. How do we come across visually when we're speaking, when we're presenting about something? Then the next part of the task was to actually either turn off the video if possible or close our eyes and listen audibly to how it is that we're coming across in our message, and if it's exactly how we intended to come across, or if there was something that we could have fixed there. And then I believe the third part was just to take the whole thing together as a whole, and so to watch ourselves both visually and audibly and see if there's any constructive criticism that we would give ourselves. And so my personal goal, of course, hands down guaranteed for this exercise, when I was preparing to share my message on camera, I had it perfectly scripted. And I felt like I had practiced it enough times and rehearsed it in my mind and nitpicked at little details enough that I was generally happy with my mannerisms and also with my word choice and all of these kinds of things. However, it really bothered me that the only way I was willing to accept this task and willing to accept my performance at this task was because it was 100% scripted. And so the goal that I set myself as part of this whole exercise, which was the point of this activity in the course, was to set myself a goal of trying to present at work, especially, while not 100% scripted. And so this took some time, and it was a process where I went from a full script to bullets, and then eventually a blank page, so basically no prompts. And I tried to improve my trust in myself, my confidence to recognize that I know what I'm talking about. I don't need a full script to be able to communicate the things that I'm trying to say. And also a little bit of self-forgiveness after the fact, where if I forgot to mention something, it's okay to send a follow-up email. It's okay to have a part two to this meeting, to this conversation, or it's okay to just let it go, right? Because maybe based on the conversation that was happening at the time, maybe that point just wasn't necessary. Maybe as I was preparing up front, I thought that maybe that was an important point of discussion, but if the discussion went a different way, then that ends up being what's relevant, right? So bit of a process for me. I don't know if anybody can relate to that from a public speaking perspective, but that was one of my excuses for today, is that I didn't have a perfect script. Even now I'm speaking with no script. I've stumbled a little bit, but we're here and I'm accepting it. So as a sort of auxiliary part of this, I was thinking too that even the fact that I don't have a fully identified vision for my business yet, or for the topic of this podcast, right? So my excuse number one was that I don't have a perfect script. That was part one, or part A, I guess, and then part B was also the perfect topic. And of course, when I start thinking about what is the perfect topic, the rational part of my mind says there's no such thing. The irrational part of my mind says, well, if you have the perfect vision for your business, then you'd be able to identify what the perfect topics are for your perfect audience. And I really am realizing now as I'm speaking, I don't even like the fact that I'm using the word perfect, because there's no such thing. But even as I spoke with my business partner recently, I had a very similar realization. And the realization comes from this sort of line of thinking, where we typically think that focus should precede action. But what I realized, and what I would challenge you to think about, is how the act of actually taking consistent steps or consistent action could actually inform your focus. And I think that that's a fundamental a fundamental part of anything that we do, right? Especially if you're trying to start a business. There's no business that exists out there. There's no service. There's no product that exists out there that didn't have some sort of an evolution and some sort of change and series of iterations, right? And iterations come with feedback, and feedback comes from putting something out there, anything, and taking note of how it's being responded to, right? And then doing something with that. So that's the most important part, right? We can get feedback all day long, but if we don't change anything, we're not going to improve. But I just think that is more of the way to think about it than trying to put this pressure on ourselves that we have to have the perfect business idea, the perfect business plan, the perfect service offering, the perfect product offering, the perfect version of a product that, or a project, that we're trying to put forth or present at work. The perfect version of a presentation with the perfect words, right? And again, as I shared just now, as I'm talking about all of this and I'm using the word perfect so many times, it really is dawning on me that is not the way to go, right? And I think that doing anything is better than doing nothing. And that includes doing the wrong thing, right? Doing the wrong thing is better than doing nothing, because at least you're taking a step, at least you're committing to action, at least you're putting yourself out there, and you are hopefully communicating to the world that you want to do something, you want to be of service, you want to add value, and you're open to listening to the feedback that might come your way, right? And that applies to a lot of different things. And I'm sorry if that sounds like a blanket statement, but I really do encourage you to reject perfect as part of your vocabulary, as I'm actually going to try to do going forward as well. And so this idea of taking consistent action that will inform your focus, I think is a really cool thing to try to think about. And so that's what I'm trying to do as we speak. I will let you know how it goes. Hopefully you'll notice how it goes along the way as well if you continue to listen in. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about that as well. If you agree, if you disagree, if you try it out, how did it go? But all of that is all part of excuse number 1, where I don't have a perfect script or topic. And that was why I was going to not record this today, but I'm already happy that I am, or that I did. So moving on to excuse number 2. I wasn't sure that I could fit it into my schedule. So this one to me has just become funny after so much time, because the I don't have time excuse is about as old as time itself, I'm pretty sure. And years ago, actually, I became more aware of the fact that this was a very, very common thing that I would say to people. And objectively speaking, I could probably argue that I actually didn't have the time, because for a period of time in my life, more recently than I would like to admit, I was working multiple jobs. I still do. I actually don't know anybody. I know 0 millennials that have only one job. If that's you, please let me know and tell me what you did right in life, because I think for the most part, not only from a financial perspective, because life is no longer affordable, that we feel like we have to have multiple sources of income. It's just a smart thing to do, right? Even if you have a lot of time thanks to your multiple sources of income, that's the ideal place to be. But in any case, long story short, have always worked multiple jobs, have always, up until this past year, actually, it'll be a year in June, that I've had actual free time to myself because I was not in school. There was always something going on outside of the 9 to 5 taking up my time. And so all this to say that arguably I could have objectively argued that I didn't have time to engage in certain activities, right? To meet with certain people, to take on certain tasks. But I actually challenged myself, and this is I'm very aware of this I don't have time excuse. Because I challenged myself to never actually say that phrase again, other than now in a descriptive sense, but I've challenged myself to not use that as an excuse or not use that as a reason why I have to turn something down, but instead to actually take ownership of the fact that saying I'm not able to make this a priority right now is more reflective of the fact that I am actually in control of how I spend my time, and also that it's okay if other things are more of a priority at the moment, right? I think this is part of learning how to set boundaries for ourselves, which I've also historically not been great at. I think it's something that we have to learn in our adult life actively, and we have to intentionally decide where it is that we're trying to set boundaries in our life, and what those boundaries are going to be. What are the pros and cons of setting the boundary that we're thinking of setting? And so understanding that it's okay if other things are a priority at the moment for me is critical, because my priorities are not going to be the same as your priorities, and that's absolutely okay. But no one's going to be able to advocate for my priorities other than me. There's literally nobody out there that can do that, right? There are other people that may be aware of what my priorities are currently. If they know that I'm working on a certain project, they know that I'm maybe trying to start this podcast, or they know what my role is at work and what that might entail. There's nobody that's actually going to actively advocate for those priorities other than me. And so it becomes critical to say, not that I don't have time, because that almost makes it sound like I'm a victim of somebody else's schedule. I'm a victim of somebody else's timelines. I'm a victim of somebody else's priorities. And that's really not the case, because I am in control of my schedule. I am in control of my time, even when we feel like we aren't. And that is really, really critical to understand, because even when you feel like, well, I have to go to this meeting, I have to take my kids to soccer. I can't relate, I don't have kids yet, but let's say, right? I'm trying to think of things that take time. I have to go to the grocery store. I have to do my meal preps. I have to go to the gym. The language that we choose to use around the priorities that we include in our day is very, very important, because to me, it's not that I have to go to the gym. I choose to go to the gym because I know that that is a source of stress relief for me. It's something that I'm doing for my health, and I've set that as an active priority for myself in my life. I don't have to do my meal preps. I choose to do my meal preps because that's going to help me be successful throughout the week, so that I can do better at work. I can do better for my family. I can do better for my friends, right? I choose to take my kids to soccer because that's important to them, because I want them to have social interactions. I want them to have something that they enjoy doing. I want them to be able to be positively occupied in a social setting that's enjoyable for them, right? I choose even the things that we feel maybe in the moment that we don't want to be doing. Like I have to go to work, right? I have to work between 9 and 5. I have to work late. I don't have to work late, right? You have labor laws behind you if you want to leave at 5, but I choose to work late because there's a project I'm working on that needs to be completed, and it's important to me that it be done well, and that it be done on time, because it's important to me to do well in this organization. It's important for me to make sure that my boss doesn't end up looking bad in front of the stakeholders that are waiting for this project or this deliverable, right? So being able to choose even our own narrative internally from I have to I choose to can really make a big difference, right? And you end up almost not even wanting to say I don't have time. It really is, I'm just not able to make this a priority right now. I have other priorities today, right? And that can be difficult for people-pleasing personalities. I'll be the first to put my hand up for that. But I would encourage you to try, right? Anything, if you catch yourself saying I have to, or I don't have time for because I have to, is usually how it goes, I would encourage you to pause, reflect on that, or think back on that after the fact, and see if you can reframe that for yourself. Because I also do think that it takes off a lot of stress, external stress, and it it helps us move away from a narrative of victimhood when we can reframe these types of things as, I'm not able to make this a priority for myself right now because I have XYZ that I've committed to for myself, for my family, for my team, for my employer, whatever, right? So there's a rant, another one about excuse number 2, which is that I wasn't sure I could fit this into my schedule today. But I'm making it happen because it is a priority for me. And I have other priorities, right? Today, my plan after this today is to drive back home and visit my family for the weekend. But whether I do that at 3 o'clock or 3:30, I'm still going to get a great amount of time with them over the weekend. There's nothing that I have planned this weekend that can't be pushed by 30 minutes. And I know how much of an impact doing this is going to have for me, because I'm going to feel great about the fact that I followed through on something for myself, and I'm going to be able to put a better version of myself forward for my family when I do get to them this weekend. So that's where I'm at with that. Excuse number 3, and then we'll wrap it up for today. I actually did have something else I wanted to chat about, but I'm also trying to keep these episodes relatively short, so we may actually have to get to it the next time around. But excuse number 3 for me today was that I don't have a large audience. And I thought, well, what a silly thing to worry about when you're starting out. And the ridiculous thing for me saying this out loud to you all is that this has really stood in the way for me for so long. And I had this little epiphany where I really don't understand why. I thought about, why is it that not having a large audience, or probably any audience, I don't even think there's anybody following this podcast yet, and rightfully so, there's no content to follow. But it is a silly thing to worry about because you can't take your 1,000th step without taking your first. And that really dawned on me today, and I thought, I'm not going to let this be an excuse for myself anymore. But then I thought I should take some time to analyze this objection a little bit more closely. It was really bothering me. And I thought, why did it bother me so much that this was even an excuse of mine? And I came to the realization that a very consistent feeling that I've been having for at least 2 years, I would say, is that I've spent so much time, so much money, so much effort learning from arguably some of the greatest educators out there. And no shade to my educators and my teachers and professors that I've had, because they've been incredible. But my peers that I had in my programs were just out of this world. I can't even articulate how valuable it was for me to learn from the people that were in my program with me. And I know there's a lot of shade being thrown out there on formal education nowadays, and that's a topic that we can cover another time. But I think that in any pursuit of formal education, you're only going to get out of it as much as you put into it, just like anything else in life. Okay? And so if you go into it, a lot of people's common experience, I think, is that they pay a lot of money to be a part of an academic institution for a certain amount of time, right? If your program takes 3-4 years, 1 year, whatever. And I think probably the most common experience is hopefully attending most classes, sometimes not. I think the people that are most upset about their cost of education or their investment into formal education are the people who didn't attend class, maybe didn't do as well, or didn't have those experiences where they got to actually learn from each other in a significant way. And there are reasons for that. I won't get into them now, but I do think that our academic institutions could do a little bit better at the undergraduate level in certain ways to make it a little bit more worthwhile for people to pursue their education and feel good about it. But doing the bare minimum in anything in life is going to make you feel bare minimum about it, right? And I definitely felt that in my undergraduate experience. However, at my graduate level experience, I actually shifted my focus a little bit from what is it that my teachers are telling me to read and to work on, and a little bit into how can I use what my teacher is telling me to read and work on to better connect and learn from the people that are in the room with me. Because I think what you learn from the people that are in the room with you is priceless. It's invaluable. And I think that that is a skill that we should be developing, or we should be encouraging our students to develop in our academic institutions, and encourage them to take that skill and continue to apply it in their working world, right? In their career that they're going to be taking on after the fact. And I don't think that message comes across. It certainly didn't for me, except for a few experiences where I thought, oh my gosh, yes, that is the way to go. Let me try that. And I felt way better about spending a ridiculous amount of money on my education. It's not about the piece of paper. It's about the network. It's not just about the network in terms of I know this many people. It's about the network in the sense that I'm growing my mental network, even by extending my reach of how I'm thinking about things based on what I'm learning from the people that I get to interact with, thanks to this sort of common element that we have together, right? We're in a common space, we're on a common path, and I have access to these various perspectives and these various experiences and these various ways of thinking and approaching problems. And so that's that rant about that. But throughout all of this time, where I like I started saying, I spent so much time, money, and effort learning from these great people, whether it be the educators, amazing, or the people that were in the room with me learning, also amazing. What I realized is that with all of that in mind, I had access to so much greatness that I really wanted to do something actively to create a safe space where I can share what I learned from everybody. And I think everybody should do that, right? I think we should all learn from each other, because each person also has had access to hundreds, if not thousands, of other people in their life. And so there's really an unlimited amount of things that you can learn from each other. And I wanted to create a safe space somehow where I can share tips and thoughts and experiences of mine that have helped me on my career or on the career and journey of people that I've met, in hopes that it would help somebody else, right? And so what I realized with excuse number 3, if we're gonna label it that way, is that I realized that what actually bothered me most was not that I wasn't reaching a lot of people. It wasn't about the audience size, but it was about the fact that I wasn't even making an effort to share what I had to share to begin with. And that really didn't sit well with me. And so I thought, even with an audience of 0 or an audience of mom and dad, which I don't discredit, that's incredible. It's incredible support to have. I can't even tell you. But even with a small audience, at least I can say that I've done my part, and I can sleep well at night. And, the water doesn't come to the horse on its own. So we're supposed to lead the horse to water. So here's me finally at least leading the horse to the water, or sharing my experience. And I think we're going to end it there for episode number 1. I am so grateful for any of you that have listened up until now. I am going to try to keep these to 30 minutes. So we'll get to what I had actually planned to talk about at a different time, but I do hope that you can recognize I intend to be vulnerable. I intend to be fully transparent. I have no problem speaking about my experiences in the most real and human way. I'm always open. If anybody would like to come and share something on my podcast and use it as a platform to share their lived experience, I welcome that more than you can imagine. This is this is the safe space that I'm trying to create. And if I have to do it alone, I'm going to do it alone, but I would love some company as well. I really appreciate you listening. Please, if there's somebody that you think could benefit from hearing what we chatted about today or what you heard about today from me, please feel free to share the podcast with them. And if there's any topics that you would like covered, if you would like to either join as a guest or if you'd like me to do some research and talk about a certain topic that might help you or somebody you know in your career, in your life, in your personal development, please let us know at the email that I'm going to link it in the description of the podcast episode, because my name is spelt a little bit strangely, and I'd want to make sure that I get your emails correctly. It's Gabriella@thegoodinggroup.com. Gabriella spelt with a Y and one L, but instead of you trying to figure that out on your own, I'm going to tag it in the description to make your life a little bit easier. Thank you so much for listening, and hope to see you and have you listen in again soon. Thanks so much.